Our next speaker is a highly influential agricultural leader in the United States. Gabe Brown advocates adamantly for no-till on his 5,000-acre farm that incorporates grazing as well as what I have heard called cover crop cocktails. Gabe's use of a blend of cover crop seeds is part of what influenced Dr. Elaine in understanding that having low-lying ground cover is a very important contribution to protecting the soil with a living system that does a bit more than just mulch. And Gabe saw in his cover crop blends that in the first year he had one or a few species sprout, and maybe that was a very dry year, but then the following year from the same seeding, Gabe saw an entirely different suite of species sprout. And if you haven't been convinced already, here's just another piece to understand that biodiversity is essential to our resilience. And now, soil regenerators, I give you Gabe Brown.
Hello everyone. I would like to welcome you to Brown's Ranch and the journey that is regenerative agriculture. So what do we have in common? What does a rancher from Bismarck, North Dakota have in common with a farmer in Mississippi or a farmer in Germany? What do we have in common? Well, the answer, of course, is soil. The principles I'm going to share with you today will work anywhere in the world where there is soil. The question I have for you is, are you satisfied with your soils? What you see on the screen here is 3 soil PEDs. One of these PEDs was taken from the edge of a field. That field edge was occasionally driven over by equipment, maybe grazed by some occasional wildlife, but basically had no management. Another one of these PEDs is from a field where the farmer practices a very diverse crop rotation. He grows a wide variety of different cash crops, plus cover crops in between the cash crops. No livestock integration. The third soil PED is from a field where the farmer only grows 2 different crops, and he rotates them from year to year. No cover crops, no livestock integration, but with tillage. Now, if you want to guess which is which, the top PED is from the edge of the field. The middle PED is from the field with the very diverse crop rotation and cover crops. The bottom PED is from the field with very little diversity, no cover crops. You might say, well, that makes sense. But what's amazing is these PEDs were all taken within 100 feet of each other, and they are all the same soil type. Let's compare systems. This is going to compare 4 producers located in close proximity, same soil types. Producer A uses tillage but has a high amount of diversity in his crop rotation. He grows a wide variety of different cash crops: spring wheat, winter wheat, soybeans, peas, dry edible beans, sunflower, etc. No synthetic fertility is used, but he does use organic soil amendments, such as fish meal, rock phosphate, etc. Basically no cover crops with the exception of the alfalfa, which is sometimes plowed down, and no livestock integration. This is what his soils look like. You see the crusting on the soil surface, you see the horizontal breaking at the different tillage depths. To this producer's credit, we did notice a fair amount of above ground biodiversity, in other words, songbirds, insects. We did not see much below ground diversity as far as macroorganisms such as earthworms. The second producer has been no-tilling for 10 years, but very low diversity. This producer basically grows spring wheat, flax, and soybeans. Anhydrous ammonia is followed with the spring wheat and the flax. Uh, Insecticides and fungicides are used occasionally. No cover crops, no livestock integration. Take a look at this soil. It's almost as if you were looking at identical soils. Now, you may notice the sunflowers in the background here. What happened this particular year, the producer seeded spring wheat, but we had 3.5 inches of rain in 45 minutes on May 15th of that year, and it washed his entire spring wheat crop away, and he had to plant sunflowers. Notice the same crusting on the soil surface, even though this producer is 10 years into no-till. Notice the horizontal breaking where the knives that inject that anhydrous ammonia go. Also, we notice very little above ground biodiversity. Not many birds, not many insects, not much below ground diversity either. The third producer is 20 years no-till, medium diversity, high input. They grow 5 different cash crops. You see them there: corn, sunflowers, barley, soybeans, spring wheat. But they use a lot of synthetics, liquid and dry fertilizers, insecticides, fungicides, seed treatments. No cover crops, no livestock integration. Here's what those soils look like. Take a look at these soils. Oftentimes, people think, well, 20 years no-till, I'm advancing my soil health. Well, are you really? Look at how compacted that soil is. That is because the high amounts of fertilizers used actually are causing a rapid depletion in the carbon in these soils, and I will show you that. The fourth producer in this study was myself. We've used regenerative practices for 26 years. We have been no-till since 1994. High diversity, low amount of inputs. We grow a wide array of different cash crops. However, we also use cover crops extensively, either before the cash crops, along with them, or in the case of fall seeded biennials, after the cash crops. We may use an occasional herbicide, once every 3 to 6 years, no glyphosate. We also integrate a wide variety of different livestock: beef, sheep, swine, poultry, a lot of bees, other insects. This is what our soils look like. And yes, I made sure it was a good picture. But you can see the differences in the soil. Notice the aggregation of that soil. Notice the rich dark color, the carbon content of that soil. I'm going to talk about a few terms here that some might not be familiar with. I'm going to talk about water extractable organic carbon. So think of soil organic matter as the house in which biology lives. Water extractable organic carbon is the food that biology eats. Here are the soil tests from those 4 operations. This was tested by Dr. Rick Haney, Temple, Texas. This is pounds of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. I want you to notice the top 3 lines there. Notice how there really is very little difference. And then you come down to my soils. Now, I haven't used any synthetics at all since 2007. I have not used compost or compost teas or any other amendments, with the exception of manure that falls out of the back end of our livestock. So how can I have more nutrients available? Well, the answer is simple. Look at the column on the right. Water extractable organic carbon. In other words, the food that biology eats. I have over 4 times the amount of food for biology as compared to the other farms. And these farms are my neighbor's farms. It's basically the same soil type. I want to make this point clear. They have every bit as much nutrients as I do, okay? But it's not available because they don't have the biology to cycle those nutrients. This is percent organic matter that was tested on these fields. Now, notice they're all the same. What's keeping that first producer from increasing organic matter content? Obviously, it's the tillage. What's holding back the second producer? It's the low diversity. What's holding back the third producer? It's the high use of synthetics. Notice how I've increased my organic matter levels. When we purchased the farm in 1991, my organic matter levels were 1.7%. Today, they're 6.9% and above. Look at infiltration rates. Basically no difference. And you may think that the no-till would be higher than the tilled field. Well, not when high amounts of synthetics are used. That's, as I said, eating up the carbon in those soil aggregates, causing a decrease in water infiltration. Now look at my rates. When we started in 1991, we could only infiltrate 1/2 inch of rainfall per hour. Now, through use of a dual head infiltrometer, we've measured infiltration rates over 30 inches per hour. So the question I get from many is, where do I start? How do I start moving down the regenerative path? The answer, I tell people, is you must educate yourself. Regenerative agriculture is a thinking person's game. You must understand how ecosystems function. We need to understand this in order to work with life instead of against it. I want to talk a little bit about total nutrient extraction because whenever I travel around the world, people tell me, oh, but Gabe, you don't understand. We don't have those nutrients on our farm and in our soils. Well, first of all, I need to explain total nutrient extraction. Think of it as the soil's bank account. It's the organic and inorganic fraction of nutrients in your soil. Through our firm Understanding Ag, we tested 45 farms in the northern Great Plains, and we tested them for the nutrients you see listed on the left there. We tested them down to a 12-inch depth. Here's what we found across the 45 farms. The average amount of nitrogen per acre was 9,000 pounds. The lowest farm we tested still had 1,200 pounds of nitrogen per acre in the top 12 inches of the soil profile. Phosphorus, 2,300 pounds per acre. Potassium, 11,000 pounds per acre. Here are the micronutrients. Every nutrient we tested for was sufficient for profitable crop production. What's the total value of that? And you can plug in your own values. I just use 50 cents a pound for nitrogen. That means there's $4,500 worth of nitrogen at today's nitrogen rates. That's a tremendous dollar amount. And we keep going and figuring out phosphorus, potassium, all these micronutrients. Yet why are farmers and ranchers spending so much money on fertility? Think of this too. How deep do your roots go? They certainly should go deeper than 1 foot. Can they go down 4 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet? How much nutrients will we have available to those steps? Fact of the matter is there's no deficiencies. So what's going on? It's an availability issue. How do we make nutrients available? We're not short of nutrients. We are short of biology. Biology is your silent partner. It is the interaction of life. Plants rely on microbes for nutrient acquisition, protection from pathogens, and much more. This is work by Dr. James White. It's the rhizology cycle. Dr. White discovered that microbes actually enter the root tip of the plant where, through a reactive oxygen process, the nutrients are removed from the biology. The biology then is expelled out the root hairs, and that's what the picture on the lower left shows. Biology being expelled from those root hairs, sent out to bring in more nutrients. It's a symbiotic relationship. So, how do we get more biology? The answer is simple: by growing a diversity of plants. Ray Archuleta said it best when he said, plant and soil are one. One must have a diverse crop rotation. Corn and soybeans is not going to work. That's not a diverse enough rotation. This is a spadeful of soil that was taken from a corn-soybean rotation. Where's the aggregation? Where's the carbon? How much life is in these soils? We need to grow cover crops. This is a cover crop that was seeded following a cash crop. Now, I want to make this clear. We are kidding ourselves if we think we can cycle enough solar energy by seeding a cover crop following a cash crop in colder climates. We must provide enough time for diverse cover crops to grow and cycle energy. This is a diverse cover crop that has had adequate time to collect that solar energy and then through photosynthesis pump those compounds into the soil to feed biology. There's 6 principles that are key to a healthy ecosystem. Number 1 is know and understand your context. What is my historical ecological context? In other words, what is the land that I farm or ranch on? What was that like centuries ago? Am I working with nature or against her? Now, this photo shows a rancher calving in the middle of winter. That's not in harmony with nature. We need to ranch in synchrony with nature. We need to grow cash crops in synchrony with nature. Second principle is we need to limit mechanical and chemical disturbance. In nature, you do not see the copious amounts of tillage that we're doing in production agriculture today. In nature, you do not see the amount of chemical disturbance that we're putting on our landscapes today. In 1997, I had the good fortune of hearing Don Campbell, a holistic rancher from Alberta, Canada, speak. And he told me this. He said, if you want to make small changes, change the way you do things. If you want to make major changes, change the way you see things. That was life-changing to me. I realized that I needed to change the way I saw things. So we need to start questioning, what are we observing? Nature is trying to tell us something at all times. Are we smart enough to listen to nature? When we see these what some might consider weeds, such as dandelions, most farmers would want to go spray a herbicide to kill those dandelions. But really, if I see them, what they're telling me is that I have a compaction issue and I'm probably short of available calcium. The dandelions are there to cycle that calcium for me. If I see quackgrass, that means I have compacted soils. And the quackgrass is there because it's highly rhizomatous to break up those compacted soils. If I see bindweed, that also means compacted soils. It's going to address that symptom. My point here is that you need to learn what nature is trying to tell you, and then you need to observe and react accordingly. Russian thistle tells us that there's a high salt content in that soil, and it's there to use up those accumulated salts. Principle number 3 is armor on the soil. Walk in the forest, walk out into a prairie ecosystem. You will always see armor on that soil. Nature wants to keep that soil covered. She always tries to protect the soil from wind erosion, water erosion, and evaporation. We need to do the same thing on our cropland fields. We cannot afford to see bare soil. We have to keep that soil protected. The fourth principle is diversity. Take a look at this photo of a native prairie ecosystem. Tremendous amount of diversity. My son taught rangeland management at the local college and brought his students out to this native prairie. In a 2-hour time frame, they collected over 140 different species of grasses, forbs, and legumes. That's a tremendous amount of diversity. Yet what are we doing in production agriculture today? We're limiting the diversity. We're planting monocultures. We need to get away from that. We need the right mix. We need grasses. We need forbs. We need legumes. We could, if it's in our context, we need bushes and trees and shrubs. We need diversity. What that does is that optimizes solar energy collection. The more different leaf sizes and shapes, the different heights, the more we're going to be able to capture that solar energy and then convert it through photosynthesis into all those compounds that are needed to drive the system. This is some very good work by Dr. Tillman. Plant biomass on the left, species diversity on the bottom. Look what happens. As we increase species diversity, we increase plant biomass. More work by Tillman. As we increase functional diversity, in other words, grasses, forbs, legumes, we're going to increase plant biomass. So why do we insist on planting monocultures in agriculture? It's not the way nature functions. The fifth principle is living root as long as possible in the soil. I took this photo, I threw my cap down there to show you this was taken during the middle of our winter in the northern hemisphere, and in North Dakota we can get pretty cold, during the winter. When you look out of an airplane, what do you see often as you're flying? There's nothing green and growing in certain times of the year. Why don't we have a living root on that soil as long as possible? We need to cover the soil with living plants. This is the photo then of my prairie rangeland that was taken during the winter. Look, I still have green growing plants photosynthesizing even though air temperatures are below zero. Many think that's not possible, but as you heal the soil ecosystem, everything changes. Never pass up the opportunity to cycle carbon. Never pass up the opportunity for photosynthesis. This is a cover crop seeded immediately following a cash crop. The sixth principle is animal integration. Ecosystems do not function properly without animals and insects. We need to integrate livestock to advance soil health. I'm going to talk a little bit about the power of stock density. Whether it's wildebeest on the plains of Africa or bison on the plains of North America, we need to mimic nature. And we can do that with grazing livestock. We need to use high enough stock densities to get the proper bite on the plants, along with good trample and dung and urine distribution. They need to be on a particular paddock for a short duration, then moved off and allow adequate recovery time. This is what happens then by doing so. One of the things that happens. On the left, you see rotational frequency. On the right is the number of years it takes to get one manure pat per square yard. So, continuous grazing, it'd take 27 years to get that soil covered with manure. But look what happens if we move once a day, the bottom line here. We're going to be able to cover that soil with manure in 1 year. That adds a tremendous amount of fertility. A single cow can put off approximately a quarter of a pound of nitrogen, 0.15 pounds of phosphorus, and half a pound of potassium per day. So think of if we have 100 cows on 1 acre for 1 day. We just fertilize that with 23 pounds of nitrogen, 15 pounds of phosphorus, 50 pounds of potassium, plus many more trace elements, and then think of the biology that comes with it, including fungi. One of the things that's sorely lacking in most agricultural systems is the fungal component in the soils. The fungal component in the rumen of an animal is what's needed to advance soil health in many ecosystems. Take advantage of livestock integration. That will lead to higher diversity. On our ranch, we not only graze beef animals, we also have a flock of ewes and raise grass-finished lamb. We run some goats. We run pastured hogs, wheel farrow, and pasture finish about 400 head of pork per year. We raise bees to produce honey and pollinate our crops. We have 1,400 laying hens out on pasture. We move them around in those portable egg mobiles. We're mimicking nature. The other thing we have is a tremendous population of wildlife. All different species of wildlife. They're attracted to healthy soils. We also have a very diverse insect population. I'll never forget Dr. Jonathan Lundgren telling me for every insect species that's a pest, there's about 1,700 species that are either beneficial or indeterminate, meaning they won't harm you or help you. We need to increase insect populations. We need that biodiversity on the landscape. This picture shows the difference between where livestock was integrated, moved. On the left-hand side of the screen, that livestock was moved one or more times per day. On the right-hand side of the screen, the livestock on those soils were moved every 2 days. Look at the difference. And this occurred in only one season of grazing a cover crop on cropland. That's pretty amazing. We can move and advance the soil health of our ecosystems much faster than we thought possible. The left-hand side of the screen is my soils today. On the right-hand side is my neighbor's soils, taken just a few feet away. We've increased our carbon levels over 4x. We've increased water infiltration over 60x. And we've been able to increase profitability on our farm over 10x. We need to do this large scale, worldwide, on all landscapes. And it can be done by simply following the principles of nature and farming and ranching in your context. The nutrient density of the food that comes off of those soils will be much higher. There is a difference. On the right-hand side of this photo is an egg taken from our pastured laying hens. On the left-hand side is a conventional commodity raised egg. Which would you rather eat? I used to wake up every morning trying to decide what I was going to kill that day. Would it be a weed, a pest, a fungus? I was going to kill something. Now I wake up every morning trying to decide how can I get more life on my farm. It is much more enjoyable and profitable working with life as compared to death. It's not change that we are looking for, it's understanding. Because only through understanding can change occur. Remember this, your farm, your ranch is a direct reflection of you. If it's not what you want it to be, then that is up to you to change. Thank you.